sing a couple of hymns to start our service this evening. On Jordan's stormy banks I stand and cast a wishful eye. Soul on fire.
waiting for
standing in our midst, here with the power to heal now, and the grace to forgive. I believe in you, Lord. I believe you are the Son of God. I believe you died and rose again. I believe you paid for us all. I believe you're here now. You're standing in our midst, here with the power to heal now, and the grace to forgive. I believe you're here now. You're standing in our midst, here with the power to heal now, and the grace to forgive. You have the grace to forgive. You have the grace to forgive. Thank you very much.
Barry, did you mercifully decide not to have a hankering this morning? Or were you not aware that a hankering, I don't know, will they reveal themselves?
Oh, it's coming upon me. I got a hankering. Anybody else got a birthday today? I know, that's what we're thinking about. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Patty. Happy birthday to you. Sorry about that.
Patty will never preach a sermon, probably. I'm still waiting. But she adds so much to us, does she not? Yes. Patty, thank you very much. You mean a lot to us. All right, let's have a prayer and dig in. Father, thank you for today, and thank you for Patty today and her birthday. Thank you for all the gifts that she shares with us and for the family that she's brought into the world. May you bless her and keep her healthy. Lord, help us as we look at your scripture. May your Spirit be our teacher. As I confess, I need you to be the teacher this morning. Lord, guide us. Help us to be shaped like you. It's in Jesus' name I pray. Amen. All right, let's go to John 20. John 20. All right, so here's where we are. We're talking Peter. Remember? Peter. Okay? Now, we have been working through essentially kind of the Easter story with Peter as our focus, okay? So there's some things, if we just go back, see, this story is going to take place on Sunday, so we're on Sunday. We can relate to that. If we go back to Thursday night, we had Peter insist that he would die with Jesus, right? And then couldn't stay awake to pray later that night, okay? But then later that night, he rallied again. What did he do when he rallied? He chopped a guy's ear off, okay? So he's up, he's down. But then later that night, maybe into Friday morning, he kind of got cowed again because when he went to the house of the high priest, he didn't quite have swinging a sword nerve. He didn't quite have the nerve to confess to a servant girl who he was, right? Whew. If he still had it on him, that's a good question. I don't know. We might have to dig into that. Yeah, that's curious. I'd want to hide the weapon too if I was trying to be inconspicuous. It's stop by your pickup and put it in there before you go on, you know. But then he chops the guy's ears off, and then he follows Jesus from a distance. He denies that he ever knew Jesus, but he's one of only 2 disciples that even went with Jesus this far. So we got to give him some credit there. I really wanted to know this time, did he go to Pilate's and did he go to the cross? And interestingly, church tradition says yes, he did. I can't figure out how to prove it though. It's just one of those things. So let's just be optimistic and let's say church tradition is right, and he followed as a spectator to Pilate's court, and he followed as a spectator to the cross. Okay, we see John is at the cross, but we don't have a specific mention of Peter. Okay, that was Friday. So Friday, the worst day. Jesus is crucified. He's taken off the cross. He's hastily put in a tomb. And this kind of sets up where we need to talk about it today. Jesus was quickly put in a tomb. Why did we hustle to put him in? Not we, but why did they hustle to put Jesus in the tomb? Before nightfall, because it was a Sabbath. And remember, Jewish days start when? Sundown the day before, okay? So it is about to be Monday if we were Jewish, okay? My little thing says that, the sun goes down at, 6:55 or something today. That would make it Monday at that point, all right? Just weird, but that's the way they think. So they're hustling on Friday to get Jesus off the cross, get him buried, because the Sabbath is about to start, and they don't want that. Nobody wants to be unclean on the Sabbath, and nobody wants to be working on the Sabbath. So the other 2 guys on the cross, they go ahead and break their legs so they'll hurry up and die so that we can get this over with. Okay, so here we are. They hastily put him in a tomb. Jesus is put there by Joseph of Arimathea and Nicodemus, but there's not time to really treat him well, right? It's hard, man. I've been, I deal with this a lot, but even in the past couple of weeks, a friend of ours has passed away in a negative situation, hit by a truck, and but he's a ways away, and the people that love him are fretting that he is in a funeral home, long way away, not cared for in the way that they would want him cared for. Right? It's upsetting. That is the status of Jesus' body right now. Okay. He has been placed in the tomb, but not like they'd like him to, right? We've been fretting about, does he have good clothes? What's he going to wear? Are we going to get a tie? How about good shoes? We need to get shoes that'll be okay. That's the thing that we've been talking about. This is not unlike the disciples' concern for Jesus. So Saturday, what can they do Saturday? The answer is nothing, all right? Sit around and worry about it, okay? So night falls on Saturday. They're not going to get out and deal with it. So when is the first chance they're going to have to do anything? Sunday morning when the sun comes up, okay? And that's where we open this story, is that first light on Sunday morning. Now, Peter, this whole time, I can't imagine. But we should imagine. We should step into it. We should feel our way into it. You had this horrible Friday. You had a horrible Thursday night. You had a horrible Friday. You watched Jesus get killed, and then we don't know. We really wondered, where did they go? Most of us assume that they went back to the room where they had the Last Supper, but we can't prove that. How do you feel if you were Peter sitting around on Saturday? What do you think? Depressed? Is that what you said? Miserable? Gloomy? Abject despair. I like it. Replaying everything. I am a talker to myselfer, and I'll tell myself the same story over and over again, trying to put it in some framework where I can sort it out. Right? I can feel. That's what I feel. Is Peter sitting around, just going over it and over it and over it again. Regret. What if I had done this? If I had only, I don't know. The if-onlys would have hit him hard. I don't know what he would have thought, because Jesus seemed to be in control the whole time. If only we had done this, if only that, if only I had understood. The last thing I said about him or whatever was I denied him. It's just a terrible feeling. Darkness, right? And now the poor guy is lying in a tomb, and he wasn't even prepared for burial. His body was just chucked in there. And I've wondered before, did the disciples even know what Joseph of Arimathea and Nicodemus had done? We're just never going to know. But they're just fretting. This man that had given them so much is now gone, and they can't do anything right this second. Obviously, the women didn't know. They knew where. They brought spices, right? Yeah, they were prepared to find him just laying there, right? Thankfully, they knew where. All right, let's jump into the story just as we are. Let's read 1 through 10. Early on the first day of the week, while it was still dark, Mary Magdalene went to the tomb and saw that the stone had been removed from the entrance. So she came running to Simon Peter and the other disciple, the one Jesus loved, and said, "They have taken the Lord out of the tomb, and we don't know where they've put him." So Peter and the other disciple started for the tomb. Both were running, but the other disciple outran Peter and reached the tomb first. He bent over and looked in at the strips of linen lying there, but did not go in. Then Simon Peter came along behind him and went straight into the tomb. He saw the strips of linen lying there, as well as the cloth that had been wrapped around Jesus' head. The cloth was still lying in its place, separate from the linen. Finally, the other disciple who had reached the tomb first also went inside. He saw and believed. They still did not understand from Scripture that Jesus had to rise from the dead. Then the disciples went back to where they were staying. Now let's stop there. That's our Peter part. Now last week we put a lot of sweat into comparing the four Gospels. That's not really necessary today. The four Gospels each have an account of this, no question about it. But John is the one where we're going to learn the most about Peter. So we're going to stick with John today. But so it is the first day of the week. Isn't that a funny feeling? I mean, I don't know. I have always thought about Monday as the first day of the week, but the calendar has it right. Sunday is the first day of the week. It would make more sense if we were Jewish, because then we would have Saturday off and we go back to work on Sunday. But regardless, this is the first day of the week. And the reason this matters is because John is trying to write a new version of what book? Genesis, okay? So he started in the beginning, right? That's the way this book goes. And that's the way Genesis goes. And so he starts and he's saying, on the first day of the week. It's like a newborn what? Creation. It's starting over today. And it's fascinating and it's beautiful. And it starts over in a garden. Not unlike the Garden of Eden. Okay, so we got the first day of the week. It's still dark. So I love this. Somebody wrote this and I've kept it in these notes. Darkness on the face of the deep, the formless beginning, the chaos, the void, the beginning. The wind and the word, God's breath, God's speech, summoning things never known before, life and light, the first day, creation. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word became flesh. The flesh has spoken, breathed, brought life and light. New creation has spilled out around him wherever he has gone. Here is the man, the sixth day. Creation is complete. God saw all he had made, and it was very good. But flesh dies. Chaos comes again. Darkness descends on the little weeping group at the cross. Two men in the fading light do what has to be done, and then the long Sabbath, the rest in the cold tomb. And now, still in the darkness, the first day of the week, the new creation, the eighth day. Eyes red from weeping and sleepless Sabbath night, women at the tomb, perhaps to bring more spices, perhaps just to weep, perhaps just to be there because there was nowhere else to be, nothing else to do, nothing else that mattered, that would ever matter. And so on this first day of creation again, these two women show up, and it's still dark. In John, he loves darkness and light. He goes, the light has shone in the darkness, and the dark has not overcome it. When did Nicodemus come to see Jesus? In the dark. Light matters to John. And so he goes, they're still dark. It's symbolic. They don't know. They're walking up to what they don't understand. They're walking up in the dark. And so this matters, but they're about to discover something. Now, who is the discoverer? What's her name? Mary Magdalene does not appear in John until this moment. Okay, yeah, I know it's the way we read the Bible. It's easy to mishmash it, and that's got its benefits. But this is Mary Magdalene's first benefits in the book of John. Until her appearance with the other, with the other Marys at the foot of the cross. She shows up at the end. John has told us nothing of her history. The little we know from the other Gospels, but her place here is spectacular. She is often called in church history the apostle to the apostles, which comes from this moment, because she has been given the message to tell, the message to tell, the thing that there is to proclaim. He is risen. That is her job. So that makes her the apostle to the apostles. She's the first person to proclaim this in the world. She is not of the highest caliber. If we synthesize it all together, we find that Mary Magdalene had some kind, I'm being vague here, but for a reason, had some kind of a rough upbringing. Whether she was full of demons or whether she was in the world's oldest profession, it'll be really hard to figure out. But that is her background, okay? And so here she is, that moment. Remember the great thing, we often think that she was the one that anointed Jesus sometimes. And so we say, Jesus looked at that person, if it's her, and said, those who have been forgiven much, love much. She loved much because she'd been forgiven much. And so we can still see this here. Here she is, before the sun comes up, loving much, right? And so Mary Magdalene went to the tomb and saw that the stone had been removed from the entrance. And in this section, she has a greater privilege yet. The first to see, to meet, to speak with the risen Master himself. It is intriguing again, indeed, that John opens his appearance accounts not with the well-known male disciples, but with a woman at the tomb. Yet at this point that is the point of this. The evangelist wrapped the Mary Magdalene story around Peter and the beloved disciple. Because what's about to happen is we have Mary Magdalene, we have Peter and the beloved disciple, and then we're going to come back to Mary Magdalene. And so she is going to be the figure in this. Creatively focused on bringing the two stories together in such a way that he could highlight the people. Okay? The beloved disciple believed without an appearance, and Mary Magdalene recognized the Lord, as will soon become evident when her name was called. So in a creative way, the writer has continued to highlight both the presence of men and women in the company of Jesus. Now, what she does is different, and we really have to be humble about this, because the different Gospels give us very different pictures of what happens next. And we'll sort that out in glory, I guess. Right now, I can't quite sort it out. There's no sense piddling about it. In this gospel, in the Gospel of John, she walks up, she sees the stone rolled away, and she takes off. Where does she go? Right. She goes right back to where the disciples are hiding. She goes right back to Simon Peter, the focus of our study, and the other disciple, the one that Jesus loved. And she spits out her best understanding. What does she think has happened at this point? Someone stole him, right? Who would steal the body of Jesus? Let's just think this through. Let's be a little forensic. Who's got motive for this crime? The Pharisees. What would they want to do with him? Okay, to make sure he isn't like honored in that way. Okay, yeah. Yeah. So she said, kind of like they did with Moses. The Israelites didn't know where Moses was buried, so that they didn't stand around and worship the grave. Essentially, it could be a thought. Who else might have motive? The disciples. What would be the disciples' motive? To say that he had risen. Very good, very good. Anybody else could we assign motive to? It's interesting, but a lot of scholars come to the idea that the Romans had the most skin in the game, the most to gain by Jesus' body disappearing, being that they could stop the Jews from using it as leverage, and they could stop the movement from growing. That could be a thing. Okay, so here we are. Who knows? But she says they have taken the Lord out of the tomb, and we don't know where they have put him. All right, cool language. And so that is the end of the Mary thing for just a minute. Then we switch to our buddy in verse 3. How does Peter react? They take off, right? They are running. Now, they run too. Mary ran, Peter ran, John ran. There is more running in these verses than in the rest of all the Gospels put together. Okay, this is the runningest part of the New Testament. And we do have such a funny thing, and we piddle with this. I'm going to offer an explanation in a minute, but it's not a great explanation. It's just the one that's the oldest. But we have a weird detail. What's our giggly detail? That there was a foot race, and that John got there first. And Peter got there second, which makes sense. We believe that John was a pretty young man, and we believe that Peter had already had a pretty good career as a fisherman. So that's where we kind of are there. They both run, but the beloved disciple does something different. At this point, their behaviors differ. What does the beloved disciple do when he gets to the tomb? He bent over, verse 5, he bent over and looked in at the strips of linen lying there, but did not go in. You had that feeling before? Where you've come up to a scene or a car or a house, and you're not sure you want to enter yet, and you just kind of look through, kind of a little overwhelmed by the moment. I don't know if I belong here. Yeah, absolutely. I think we all will at some point, at least. And so he gets there. He does look in, and what does he just see? Let's just go ahead and piece this together, because it's going to become more important in a minute. What does he see when he looks in? Strips of linen. What were these strips of linen? What's their purpose? They were wrapped around Jesus' body, right? These would be what, if we were to really do our best job of studying, we would go back to Lazarus, because it's in John as well. And Lazarus was wrapped out, but there was a weird thing with Lazarus. He came out in what form? Still wrapped, right? And Jesus makes a strange comment. What does Jesus tell him to do? Loose him, yeah, take off his grave clothes, right? So that, because it's the same author in a relatively close period of time, we have to think, well, there must be some indication. Jesus must have been wrapped with linens, kind of like you and I might picture a Halloween mummy. That's kind of crass, but it'd probably be the quickest picture that we could look at, right? But when he sees the linens in there, he stops. And this is the part I'll wager, I'll give you the classical explanation for in a minute. But for now, let's watch our buddy Peter. Peter comes up. He catches up, he's breathing heavy, he's got an open tomb, he's got John standing in the door, and he does what? Just blows by him. What does that tell us about Peter? What do we know about Peter? He's rash. What? Compulsive. Reacts in the moment. He does before he thinks. But in this case, I got no fault for the guy, right? I might be tempted to fault the beloved disciple. Don't be afraid, don't be daunted, and go in there, Follow your heart. Peter is clearly in the throes of great emotion, and he lets that passion override something of his brain. Okay, he runs in there. He went straight into the tomb. And there he saw the what? But he sees more when he gets closer. He sees the cloth that had previously been wrapped around Jesus' head. And then we have a weird detail, and this is where we're going to get a little funky. It won't take us long, but we need to understand. Where is the cloth? In its place. Huh? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay, so Johnny has got into the mud. Okay, but let me say, I don't know. I'm not an expert. But this, if it was correct, this would be the Shroud of Turin. Okay, we have a lot of trouble with that. It's one of those I'm going to ask God when I get there kind of moments. But if we're correct, then, if those people are correct, then we're speaking about the Shroud of Turin. So same cloth here, okay? And so he sees it, it's there, and it's in its place, which indicates something a little odd. That this is orderly. First off, the linens are there. Last time me and Barry stole a dead body, we did not bother to unwrap it first, right? That's not really what I would want to do, right? If I'm going to do something gruesome like that, I would rather see it encapsulated, right? So it doesn't make sense why the linens came off. It also doesn't make sense why the cloth was folded and laying in its place, right? And we have a little bit of a translation issue. We keep getting folded, but, huh? Basically, we're going to split into two camps, and I'm not going to wager about who's right. One camp says exactly what Nancy says, that Jesus sat up, he took the cloth off his face, he folded it, he put it down, and then he started to unwrap himself, and he laid it down orderly. The other camp says that he passed through the cloths just like he passes through the door in the next chapter. So one interpretation is that when he looked in, he saw the face thing where the face should be, and he saw the claws where the cloth should be, and it was all just still, like he had just evaporated, okay? The other camp is that he took it off, folded it up, and set it in his place. We'll ask the Lord someday, okay? It doesn't matter. Well, some versions do, and I kind of want to fiddle with it, but I kind of don't. There's a Greek word meaning like orderly. So it's basically, if we were going to get really awkward, we would say, in language, we would say the cloth orderly, separate from the linen is basically all we would have in Greek. So you could say orderly as in folded like you order your dresser drawers, or orderly meaning that's where they expected it to be. That's what we have in Greek. And they're both fine interpretations of the Greek. But let's go back. Our faith isn't going to hinge on whether it's folded or orderly or in its place. It does indicate one important thing, intentionality, okay? This is important because you get up out of your bed in the morning, you throw the covers off and you go, and I don't make my bed. And I could not tell you right now. I took a little nap this afternoon. What is the shape of my sheets? Right? I couldn't tell you. If you offered me $100,000 to describe where my sheets and pillows were right now, I couldn't tell you. Right? Because I didn't do it with any intentionality. I just got up and I left. This indicates, with this weird word of orderliness, that there was intentionality, that was purpose, there was structure, okay? Something was happening the way it was supposed to happen, okay? All right, the cloth was lying in its place, separate from the linen. True to his nature, Peter impetuously rushed right into the tomb. We can smile when we remember that when Peter needed to have his feet washed, he wanted a bath. But when we're more serious, we'll remember that Peter confessed a willingness to lay down his life. He denied Jesus 3 times. He sliced off an ear, but then he backed down to a servant girl. And then on the sea, when he learned that it was the Lord, he hastily jumped off the boat and sprang into the water. Okay? We're starting to pick up on this pattern. We're pretty comfortable with it. And we see all this. Okay? Now, let's dig in. Let's go to John, and then we'll dig into the big old-timey theory. Peter runs in. He sees all this. And he looks. No indication is given to us how Peter feels at this point other than just what Peter sees. But verse 8, the other disciple who had reached the tomb first, we're getting our clarity about who got there fastest, he also went inside. But what did he do what do we learn about him that we didn't learn about Peter? He saw and he believed. Okay, this is good and it's powerful. The younger man, the beloved disciple, goes into the tomb after Peter. And the idea that they had up to that point, what must have happened, that someone took the body away, but it was unwrapped. So that looks stupid. Something quite new surges up in the young disciple, a wild delight at God's creative power. He remembers the moment ever afterwards, that it was delightful. It was like a sunrise. It was like a bit of the sound of rain at the end of a long drought. He believed that Jesus was the Messiah. He believed that God had sent him. And he was God's man for God's people and God's world. But this was different. Now he saw and believed. He believed that the new creation had begun. He believed that the world had turned the corner out of its long winter into spring at last. He believed that God had said yes to Jesus, to all that he had been and all that he had done. He believed that Jesus was alive again. All right, so we have this. And we have this weird thing in parentheses, verse 9. This has to clarify for us, because at the end of verse 8, he saw and believed. Verse 9 has to clarify for us, what does he have to believe at this point? He now understands. It's trying to tell us that John gets it, that Jesus had to die and that Jesus had to raise from the dead, and that he gets it for the first time. And then they go back to where they're saying. Now, this is the iffy part. This won't change your life, I don't think, but it is fascinating to me. In the past, like the way past, especially during the time of Augustine, who set up a lot of our theology, they looked at Scripture very different than we do today, okay? So what we have is this weird paradox, because a lot of the theologies that we count on come from that period of time, but we really would never read the Bible that way. We would never read it that allegorically. But if you read this allegorically, people represent things. And I think I wrote it down how I think I can explain it best. Peter comes to represent something because of the cloth coming down to him with the animals. Because of his experience at the house of Cornelius. What does Peter come to represent? Mission to the Gentiles. Although Paul was much more impactful in his travels, Peter comes to represent the Gentiles to this group of people. John is very Jewish. You and I don't think of it this way, but he is writing a new Genesis, for Pete's sake, okay? The Johannine church is understood to have been very Jewish, okay? So what we have in this allegorical sense that early Christians believed without question, and I don't know if you and I can get there comfortably, was that in this case, Peter represents the Gentiles and John represents the Jews, okay? I'm not saying that I believe this, I'm telling you this because I find it fascinating. If we were to look at it this way, that would indicate that the Jews were at the truth first, but they didn't enter for a bit. There was a delay, right? And then if we take it this way, the Gentiles did what? Just went right on in, but they didn't know what it meant yet. Does that make sense? You see where Augustine got this way, okay? And then when the Jews decide that they're going to embrace the Messiah, as in the Johannine church, what were they really good at? Believing and understanding, okay? Because they had the background, all right? I'm not saying that that's gospel. I'm saying that is the early church and the great fathers of the church's interpretation of these weird details about speed and entrance and hesitancy and belief and all these things. And so it, for them, kind of meant something, that the Gentiles rush in with excitement, but they don't yet understand. And the Jews come with hesitancy, but when they come, they understand. Do you see this? Is this okay? Again, I'm just telling you because I find it fascinating. I'm not telling you because I'm sold on it. Any questions or discussion about that? See what it does for you. All right, so they go back. I love this because this verse kind of bothers me. If I saw all this, I don't know that this is how I'd react. They look around, they go, well, he ain't here. Let's go home. I mean, I get not knowing what to do with yourself, but still, it seems kind of, because we know from the next verses that we're not even talking about a long time frame. Let's go to verse 11. Let's read 11 through 18. I know this isn't about Peter, but it's hard to start this story without finishing it. Now Mary stood outside the tomb crying. As she wept, she began to look into the tomb. And two angels in white seated where Jesus' body had been. Wait, I missed a word. And saw two angels in white seated where Jesus' body had been, one at the head and the other at the foot. And they asked her, "Woman, why are you crying?" "They have taken my Lord away," she said, "and I don't know where they've put him." At this, she turned around and saw Jesus standing there. But she did not realize that it was Jesus. He asked her, "Woman, why are you crying? Who is it you're looking for?" Thinking he was the gardener, she said, "Sir, if you have carried away, tell me where you've put him and I will get him." Jesus says to her, "Mary." She turned toward him and cried out in Aramaic, "Rabboni," which means teacher. Jesus said, "Do not hold on to me, for I have not ascended to the Father. Go instead to my brothers and tell them, I am ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God." Mary Magdalene went to the disciples with the news, "I have seen the Lord," and she told them that he had said these things to her. All right, beautiful, beautiful. So Peter and John take off. What does Mary do? Stays there, right? This is good. This is good. It makes a lot of sense, especially when we tie things in. Peter and John were two of the guys who could not stay and pray. And in their impetuousness and in their anxiety and in their fired upness, they go home. But Mary seems to be better at waiting. Mary seems to be more patient. Mary seems to probably have nothing else going on in her life. Jesus rescued her, not from a successful fishing business, but from whatever she was, however we mine that out of the other Gospels. She is lost more than Peter has in some sense. And she stood outside the tomb crying, and as she wept, then she began to investigate. She finally looked in. And when Mary looks in, she doesn't see exactly what Peter and the beloved disciples saw. What does she see? Two angels, one at the head, one at the foot. Fascinating. No explanation I've found for why they're spaced that way or why that detail comes in. The symbol that the tomb was no longer under human control, but was the domain of God and his purposes. God's workers are in there now, not Roman workers and not Pharisee workers and not even Joseph and Nicodemus, but God's men are in there. And they asked her, "Why are you crying?" And she begins to return to her own guesses about what happened. Mary still has a fear. Even though she's seen the grave clothes, now that she sees these two dudes, what's her guess? Something happened, something fishy. They took my Lord away, and I don't know where they put him. I don't know where they put him, and they took him away, and I'm really upset. That's why I'm crying. She still has this suspicion that something fishy has happened. Let me turn my page. Verse 14 is beautiful, but it's weird. What happens in verse 14? At this point, she turned around. She saw Jesus standing there. We don't need to picture her at this point down inside the tomb. She seems to still be, it says she looked in and saw the tomb, and she's still somewhere in the doorway. She turns around, she sees Jesus standing there, but what's the weird detail? She doesn't know who he is right now. She assumes he's what? that is not an accident, because God is growing a new world, okay? Here he is, the new Adam, the gardener, charged with bringing the chaos of God's creation into new order, into flower, into fruitfulness. He has come to uproot the thorns and thistles and replace them with blossoms and harvests. He is the gardener of the whole world, who will now raise up and tear down and put God's Garden of Eden back together. And she says to him, "Sir, if you have taken him, just tell me where he is and I'll go get him." She's pushing. I want to resolve the situation, but she still has not recognized him. And then verse 16 is beautiful in its simplicity. It doesn't even necessarily need commentary. What does he say? Her name. Why is it so short? And why is that so touching? Yes. She knew it was Jesus. Intimate. Yeah, it could have been. It could have been. Mary, snap out of it. I don't know. We'll have to work on that. Yeah. No one says your name.
See him standing there either.
Hmm?
She didn't expect to see him standing there.
That's true.
She wouldn't have recognized him.
That's true.
She just saw a guy standing there.
Mm-hmm. The sun is still coming up. That could be a factor. There's something that we need to drag into this on that point, though, is that when Jesus later walks through the door, the disciples are not sure who he is. And on the walk to Emmaus, those disciples are not sure who he is. There's something weird about Jesus' resurrected body that people don't quite pick up right away, that it's Jesus. He looks different in the new creation. We'll see how that plays out. Yeah, that's right.
She recognized the voice of the one who had called her in the first place.
Mm-hmm. So much meaning in this, and I love the human ability, God's image inside us, to pick up on the meaning. Doesn't even really need explanation for all of us to internalize the power of that moment. Yes. On the mercy seat. Very good. It's good reading. Very good reading. Thank you, Nikki. If you don't know, the Ark of the Covenant had two cherubim facing each other on each end, and in the center was a seat for an invisible God. So she was saying maybe that's the symbolism of the angels right there. Good reading. I found it I wanted to know, just kind of the way I'm wired, what did it sound like in Aramaic when he said her name? Because Mary is a Latinization of this. It was Marian, is what he said. When the sound that came out of his mouth in that moment was Marian. We know from John 10 that when the good shepherd calls his sheep, they what? They know his voice. This is a beautiful symbolism that John is likely connecting. That when the flock hear the shepherd's voice, they call him. She responds in a funny way, but in a beautiful way. Rabboni, which is, it sounds really strange for me to say this. Obviously, we know the word what? Rabbi. We don't understand the end part. It's a cutesy addition to the end of a word. It's like a postfix that adds affection, right? You ever take someone's name and put a Y on the end? You know what I mean? My grandpa, I don't know if he walked in and spoke my name, the one that's passed, I would expect it to sound like Josher, right? There's no need for the ER on the end, but it's a affectionate postfix. Does that make sense? That's what she did. my teachy. I don't know. There's no good equivalent to that, but that's what she did. Is she made it more affectionate, which means teacher. And it probably had some weird, funny interplay with Aramaic as well. It is a heightened form of rabbi. Now, what I don't like, because it gives me so many questions, is this next verse. She says Rabboni. She runs and she does what? She grabs him, or she tries to grab him. And in verse 17, this is the part I don't like because I can't get the answer that I'm satisfied with. What weird thing does Jesus say? Don't hold on to me. Oh my gosh. This verse belongs to a handful of the most difficult passages in the New Testament. The initial prohibition, me mau haptao, can be taken several different ways, like touch me not, don't hold on to me, or the New American Standards, stop clinging to me. What meaning we choose turns on this part right here. It's a theological statement contrasting the passing nature of Jesus' presence in his post-resurrection appearances and the permanent nature of his presence in the Spirit. There's another, so one is like, hey, I have work to do. Hey, I can't stay, isn't one way to look at it. If you want to put it in very modern terms, I can't stay, I have work to do. I won't live here forever, I'm passing through now. But another plausible explanation is, you don't have to hang on to me. I'm not done on earth yet. We still have work to do. What we know is that Mary is not upset by this. So whatever he meant, she didn't take it as a rebuff, so it doesn't seem to upset her. But he's kind of saying, hey, this is, I kind of live there in my head these days. If I just read it through, I would hear Jesus saying, you don't have to hold on to me. This isn't goodbye. We have a lot to do, okay? I have not yet ascended. I'm with you for now. It could even be, if you wanted to play with it, you don't have to hold on to me. I'm not dead yet. Okay, you might have thought that I was ascended to the Father. I'm not ascended to the Father. I'm still here. Okay, so that's kind of how I would read it. And then he tells them the cool thing: go tell my disciples that I'm going to the Father. Go instead to my brothers and tell them I'm ascending to my Father and your Father, and to my God and your God. I love this. We can't get into it too much. But earlier in John, he was referring to my Father and my Theou. Now, after the resurrection, peace has been made between God and man, and the terminology has changed. Whose Father is he now? Our Father and your Father. Whose God is he now? Our God and your God, right? So this is like he's establishing through these words this new theological reality that because of the cross, he's your Father, he's your Father, he's your Father, as well as he is Christ's. And that's a beautiful picture. I just love that. He also says, go and tell my brothers. He has changed his followers, his disciples, his servants to my brothers. There's a commonality. He's talking about the restored relationships because of the cross. Feel the full force of verse 17. Go and say to my brothers, I am going up to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God. It's relationship. And these words establish meaning and connections between parties. And in verse 18, we get Mary, the first apostle. What does she say? I have seen the Lord. And she told them that he said these things to her. It is beautiful. And Peter and John wish they'd have hung around just a little bit longer, right? We could put that in the impetuousness of Peter. A few things that just to mention, not to belabor this, but John is writing a new Genesis for followers of Jesus. God made the world, we screwed the world up. So he made the world again. On the new day one, Jesus the gardener appears. The dawn is a making of a new. And let there be light. Maybe the most appropriate callback at this moment. And this light will stretch its way around the earth through the hearts and the lives of Christ's followers until the whole earth is renewed and we are alive and healed in a whole world under the kingship of King Jesus. But this also is a statement of new relationship, and we just went through that pretty good. All right, comments, questions, rebuttals. It's a great question. She said, I wonder if John and Peter got along. They were hanging out. They did. They were together. They at least were like that. I have wondered that just on so many levels. How could you take, let's just say 12 men, spend 3 years together? How many conflicts did they have to lay down? You know? Yeah. When Peter says, how many times do I have to forgive my brother? He may be going, how many times have I got to forgive my brother? I don't know. But you're right. They seem to have an interesting relationship for sure. All right. Let's sing our way out of here.
I love to sing about singing. I will sing of the mercies of the Lord forever. I will sing of the mercies